Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NEN Refresher webinar. My name is Chandan, and on behalf of Vadhwani Foundation, I would like to invite you all for this refresher webinar on design thinking for customer delight, and would also like to introduce our expert speaker, Dr. Rajiv Roy. Dr. Rajiv was an entrepreneur for 9 years. Soon after completing his post-graduation from IIM Ahmedabad, India, he has mentored several entrepreneurs across many countries. He has been involved in entrepreneurship development in countries like India, Oman, Turkey, Chile, and USA. He has trained over more than 500 entrepreneurship educators, more than 1,000 entrepreneurs on different methodologies and content in various countries. Before I hand over the floor to Rajiv, there are a few reminders for the audience. You will be on mute. You may ask the question by typing it in the question panel provided to you. Now over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Chandan, and a big welcome from here in India. I had a very nice time in Kenya when I was there last year, and it was extremely nice to meet a lot of faculty, to interact with them, to find out what all you are doing in Kenya, and had a really nice time in your lovely country. Just before we start the session, there are a few things I just want to tell you. As Chandan mentioned, the format is such that it will not be possible for us to be very interactive in this, so I will start out by giving the basics of what design thinking is and a little bit about how it is to be done in class effectively, and after that we move on to taking your questions and sorting out some of the queries you might have. The queries can be both about the theory behind design thinking and can also be in terms of implementation in the classroom, but the pedagogy, the various ways in which you get student involvement, all of that. Now, some of the limitations that we are going to have is that we have very little time, so we will be looking specifically at the basics of design thinking, not anything more than that. Also, a little bit of a warning, you are going to hear some loud noises in the background. Please don't think it is China attacking India or any such thing. We have Diwali, which is a festival which is there are a lot of firecrackers which are burst by kids on this festival, so that is the sound that you'll be getting on the microphone. So please don't get too very worried about it. We are not going to go to war with China, at least not anytime soon. Okay, so getting back to design thinking, it is one of the most powerful concepts that has entered the domain of management and entrepreneurship in the recent past. More than just being a method or a concept, it's an entirely different way of thinking that is being promoted over here. A little bit about what is the definition that we'll go with when we are looking at design thinking. Design thinking in the context of business uses designer sensibilities and methods. So the first part of this is that it uses designers' sensibilities and methods, the methods which have been traditionally used by the design community. And then it comes to purpose. The purpose is to match people's need with what is technologically feasible. So you end up trying to get to what the people's actual needs are and match that to something, a product or a service, which is technologically feasible. The next part of this entire thing, what makes design thinking a very integral part of management and entrepreneurship now, is that you just don't come up with a product or service. You take it forward and you have a viable business strategy which converts it into customer value and hence a market opportunity. So this is, in short, what design thinking's definition is all about. Important thing over here is using design methods, trying to find out people's needs and match it with a technologically feasible solution. Okay. Now moving on, let's look at the process. The process of design thinking, you will come across a variety of such charts. You'll have a 8I process, the 3A process. You'll have a lot of these processes which delineate how exactly design thinking is done. But for the purposes of this particular refresher, let us look at a 5-stage process. Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So what exactly do these things mean? Let us take this one by one. So the first stage is empathize. When we are looking at empathy, I would like to think of empathy as being the central concept of design thinking. This is the very foundation of what design thinking is all about. So in order to empathize, you can do 3 things over here. At an early stage, it is observe. By observe, what I mean over here is view the potential users or the identified users, what exactly is their behavior in the context that you want to observe them. So if you want to find out what is the way in which people use cars, for example, so use them while they're using cars. Even observe them when they are buying cars. Observe them in their usage of cars. Observe them when they are talking about cars. And the entire behavior when it comes to a car is what you need to observe. It can be direct observation, and sometimes can also be indirect observation where you actually ask others what they think about various users' reaction towards the product, in this case a car. The second is interact directly, engage with them. This is when you interview the users and find out from them what exactly is it that they do with the car. So ask them, so do you like this? Do you like the kind of speed it gives you? Do you like the price? What are the main challenges you face in using a car? What are the things that delight you in a car? And go into deeper questions also. A lot of open-ended questions, a lot of questions which actually stem from the answers that the users are going to give you. So engage in various ways. The third one, which I think is extremely important when you're doing something which is design thinking and you want to do it well, is when you immerse yourself. So what do I mean by immerse? Immerse is a way in which you experience what the user experiences. Now, for example, let's make it a little more pointed. Let's look at trying to redesign electric car, for example. So if you're wanting to redesign an electric car, then you would probably want to ask users or first observe users, those who are using electric cars. Then you would seek to engage with them, that is go talk to them, ask them what the challenges are, ask them what their nice feelings about using an electric car is, and then finally immerse yourself. That means actually use an electric car for a while. Maybe take it out for a spin, on a more engaged way, keep the car in your garage for about a month or 2 months, use it on a regular basis, go to office on it. So that makes it an immersive experience. That is when you really put yourself in the shoes of the customer and think like the customer thinks. That is the real empathy that you are showing in this context. So why empathize? As any human-centered designer, you will need to understand the people for whom you are designing. The problem you are trying to sort or solve is rarely going to be a problem that you have. It is going to be a problem faced by a particular user. In order to design a product or a service which is appropriate for that particular user, you must build empathy for who they are and what is important to them. So what exactly are you going to do if you are going to empathize with them? There are very many ways of doing it, as I discussed, but the objective of this always is to uncover the needs that people might have. Sometimes they're aware of the needs, but you must also be conscious of the fact that sometimes the people are not aware of what their actual needs are. Next, of course, you might be in a position where you are starting off with a product which is almost made, or it is a product where the basic features have already been decided and only some refinement is the thing that you are after. In that case, it is also important for you to find out who the right users are for whom you are designing the product. Again, going back to the car example, the electric car example, so who exactly is it that you're designing the electric car for? Is it somebody who's a daily commuter? Is it somebody who uses it for something commercial application, ferrying goods or ferrying customers up and down the main street in the city? Or is it somebody you are designing who's going to take the car for a long holiday or something like that? Or somebody who has occasional use of the car for recreational purposes or for entertainment purposes, probably takes it out for an evening or probably goes on a picnic every weekend, those kind of usage. So you have to find out exactly who the right users are for whom you are designing. The most important thing, I think the crux of this entire episode around empathizing, is that you have to discover the emotions that guide behavior when the person is using or thinking about using that particular product. Okay, so this is the first stage, and as I said, this is probably the most important stage of the ones that we have intruder. Yeah. So this is probably the most important stage that we have, and the next stage that we come to is define. So what exactly is define? The define mode is when you are unpacking and synthesizing all the empathy related findings, and you are synthesizing these into a specific and meaningful statement or scope of what you are doing. In this mode, you are focusing rather than going broad or flaring out. The two goals of the define mode will be to develop a very deep understanding of your users and the design space, and based on that understanding to come up with an actionable problem statement. This is your point of view. Well, there will be some people who will argue that it should not always be in the nature of a problem statement, but I would like to say that default, look at it as a problem statement and go ahead with that assumption. So what is a good point of view that you can develop over here? The point of view is that it frames the problem. It frames the scope of what you can solve with your new product. It provides a reference for evaluating a competing idea. So whether the other idea is good or bad can usually be evaluated by the extent to which the idea solves the problem that we are talking about. Also, because you have gone on a journey of empathy and you have a lot of knowledge about your target customer right now, it is possible to revisit and reformulate the problem statement that you have come up with. Now, for example, in electric cars, one problem statement could be, I have a limited range that I can drive it for because the battery will run out. So I cannot go for a distance of more than 50 kilometers. Can be a problem statement when you are looking at users of electric cars. You can find out how the existing solutions are. For example, you can think about the Think car, which goes about 40 kilometers. Then you can think about the Zico car, which goes for about 70 kilometers. Okay, so when you're looking at this particular problem statement, the Zico car is a little better than the Think car. That is also a way you'll be able to evaluate the competing ideas. Revisit. For example, you might have had some users who talk about the range. You might have had some other users who talk about the cars being small, the cars being not beautiful, or it might be some others who have talked about not exactly the range, but the top speed. They might say that if there's a top speed which is about 35, which is about 40 kilometers an hour, it really does not allow me to, or optimize my time in the traffic and I get late for work. So the define is when you come up with a problem statement that you are going to solve in a while. The next stage is the glamorous one. This is where you come up with the idea. This is what gets all the attention. This is where you, as an individual, sit down, or as a group, sit down, and then find out what might be the possible solutions for the problem statement. So the idea behind ideation is, irrespective of the processes that you're following, early on, build volume, build a large number of ideas and a variety of ideas. So there can be a variety of solutions. So when we talked about the car issue, one very easy way out over here is, okay, have a bigger battery. Other solutions could be have a lesser weight for the car. So there can be a variety of solutions in addition to these two also. Just list them out. Make sure you have 20, 30, 40, as many ideas as can happen. Also, the other thing is, don't judge too early. So if one of the ideas says that use magnetic resistance as a way of increasing the lifespan of a battery or increasing the usage of a battery, don't reject it outright. Let's see what might be the worth of it a little later on. Again, there's a very old concept of whether it is effective to ideate in teams and whether it is effective to ideate as an individual. There are enough arguments on support of both of these sides, and to be fair to this entire thing, I think it depends upon the situation and it depends upon the kind of problem. I think a combination of both, where you end up ideating in a team but you're also given individual time to ideate, is probably one of the best ways out. Now, building on the ideas of others is something that is inherent to a group process of ideation, where some person comes up with an idea, other people contribute to it. Another way of looking at it is 3-4 ideas can be combined and made a better idea. So you can go about a lighter car, and you can go about a bigger battery, and you can go about both of these in the same car itself. Let us then go to the next stage of this entire process, which is prototyping. Prototyping is when you actually come up with the solution and express it in a product or the design of the service, which can be implemented immediately. So in the case of an electric car, it is actually producing the car that you have dreamt up or thought of. In the case of a new service package, like let's say designing a new package for tourists. So if you're trying to target tourists who are wanting to go and look at trouble zones, so design a package where they can actually go and spend time in on the borderlines of Syria or Yemen, or a bad example, but you get what I mean to say. So the objective over here is, before you have prototyped, you have certain ideas of what works and what doesn't work. Once you have actually expressed it in a product, now you know what works and what doesn't work to a far larger extent than you knew before you had the prototype. Next is, when you have prototypes, you can explore multiple options. What I mean is, when you're building the prototype, sometimes while building, it's easy to know what seems to be working and what is not working. So what is not working can be very easily rejected during the building process rather than at an ideation process or at a marketing process. If there are disagreements among members of the same team as to which is better, while you're making the prototype, usually those disagreements disappear, because once the physical form of the product is out there, many of the disagreements tend to vanish in the face of the reality which is in front of the two sides of the people who are arguing. Most importantly, if you have a prototype which you can then take to the market, it allows you to fail quickly and cheaply and not make mistakes later on when you are launching it in a larger way. So the fifth step, which is very, very connected to the fourth one that we talked about, is about testing. Go out into the market. Alpha testing is when you're testing it within a small group, within the working group, so the stakeholders themselves try it out. And beta testing is when you go out to a group of customers, a set of people who are probably heavy users or early users, and you offer it to them. Testing allows you to refine your prototype, so your solutions end up getting better, and you certainly end up learning a lot more about the user also. That is, of course, in the process of testing. And the idea behind testing, obviously, is to make sure that you refine your point of view to a large extent. Okay, so this is the 5-step process behind design thinking, but it is not just a process. There are a few other important things over here. For these 5 stages of the process, you also need certain methods. I will only concentrate on 6 of the methods that you can use. Obviously, as I said, there are a number of methods, but we'll only go for a few. The interview is an important one. I will make an assumption that all your students who are going to be doing design thinking will be doing interviews. So let me give you some pointers about an interview. Go prepared for an interview. Ask your students to make sure that they're prepared for it. They should brainstorm what the questions are. They should identify and order some themes. There are going to be a lot of grouping in the questions that are going to come up. So let's say, again, going back to the example of a car, there might be a set of questions around what exactly is it in the car that bothers you. So questions around the battery, questions around the aesthetics. So there are questions around the range. So there will be groups of questions which can be there, which will be useful when you are going ahead and doing the interview. Preceding the interview is the observation. Observation is primary and interview comes after that. But in a lot of cases, I have seen hurried timelines means, and many of the classroom situations, the interview is one which is certainly done. Sometimes the observation is skipped. If you are giving time to your students, make sure that there is observation. Proof of observation can be got to classroom itself if you insist on what is called a camera study. So what exactly is a camera study? A user camera study is when you ask your students to go and film the users while using the product or while buying the product. It can be in the form of video or it can be in the form of stills too. Of course, you have to warn your students that they have to have a right for other people's privacy, and they should take permission of the users before getting them on camera. Another important tool that is to be used, it's a sort of an internal tool, is the journey map. The journey map maps out the entire process that you have undertaken during design thinking. So what was the first thing that you did? You went and did an observation. What was the second thing you did? Oh, you went and conducted 5 interviews, maybe a group study, and then you went ahead and did an immersive study where you tried to become the customer. All of these and the results from these, the chief learnings from these, the remarks from what exactly happened, all of these are to be recorded in what is a journey map. The journey map helps you revisit some of the earlier things that you have done, makes the group of students understand exactly why is it that they went on a certain pathway and not the other. So it helps you recap what has been going on. A composite character profile is something very important. I would, those who are artistically inclined among your students can actually go ahead and draw the face. Otherwise, they can pick up a cartoon or a real character's face from the net. They can download it, or at least build a profile in terms of age, gender, socioeconomic profile, location, all of those things. create a persona behind who exactly is this customer that they are selling to or they want to sell to. Once they have this character profile, then it becomes easier for them to design the product and design a variety of things that go with the product. Uh, Other two, the empathy map and the how, what, why framework, are some things which I will explain in the next two pages. The why, how, what is when you ask these three questions. For example, the example over here is that of Apple. So why is a very central one. What is the purpose? What is it that is a cause for which you are doing? For example, in the case of Apple, the real purpose is that they believe in challenging the status quo and doing things differently. How is the process that they have in order to achieve the purpose? What are the specific actions which are taken to realize the why? In the case of Apple over here, it is that their products are very beautifully designed and are easy to use. The what is the result. It is the result of why and the how. For example, in the case of Apple, they end up making computers and achieving their why through how. Okay, so if you map it out for your customers, it allows you to understand the motivation and the behavior behind what your customers do in the context of the product that they are using. Next, let us go on to what is called the empathy map. The empathy map maps out. It helps you to make an overall character profile, but the empathy map is far more than just a character profile. It maps out what the customer thinks and feels, what really counts for them, what are the major preoccupations, their worries, what are the things that they look forward to. All these come under the think and feel. For example, what does the customer think and feel when they're buying a car? They think about moving from point A to point B. They think about the price of the car. They think about the running cost of the car. They think about the social prestige of the car. They think about the convenience that a car gives them. So all those go into the part of the think and feel. So what is the customer here? This is the social opinions which are important for the customer. For example, it would be things like what do the friends say? What is the atmosphere in the office like? So if I buy an electric car, what would people think of me in the office? Would they think I'm a forward-thinking, ecologically conscious person? I'm a technologically advanced person? Or would they think I'm probably a very nerdy kind of person? So what exactly is it that is the likely opinion, or what exactly is the person's inference about other people's opinion about the context of the product? So what does he see? What are the trends in the market? What exactly is happening in the city? What is happening in the world? What is visible on TV? Where does he think the world is moving towards? And finally, what does he say and do? It can be a variety of things. You might think that a person is very conservative from the way they talk, from the way they dress, and you would assume that the same things will also carry over to the kind of car they end up choosing. Or there might be loud and flamboyant people, and again, that would be reflected in the kind of car that they are ending up choosing. Also important over here is what are they scared of, the pains, the fears, the frustrations that they have, and the gains that they are likely to have. What do they intend to gain out of using a car? What are they likely to gain? The kind of wants and needs that are going to get satisfied when they use the car. So this is the empathy map. You'll be getting this presentation, so this empathy map is part of it, but I'm sure you can download various versions of it. This is just one of the versions. There are various versions of it in many places. Now, it's important in the classroom to use very locally relevant examples. I have quoted a few examples over here which give you an idea about use of design thinking in various businesses. So just to give you a broad overview of some of the things that we have seen, some of the examples are from Africa, different parts of Africa, both East and West Africa. Farmerline is a business out of Ghana. It has a lot of informational products which are important for the customer. When Farmerline was started, the entrepreneur actually went, who was born and brought up in an urban setting, the entrepreneur actually went and spent a lot of time in the villages to find out exactly what are the questions that the farmers have. The entrepreneur actually spent a lot of time doing a lot of farming himself so that he understood what exactly is the problems faced by the customers. And then a slew of products, a lot of information-based products, where the customers could, where the farmers could find out about weather, about raising patterns, about market prices, and a lot of other such things. One of the more successful companies out of Ghana. Captain Foods is a very interesting company. So the entrepreneur over here came out with a variety of food products and tried it out on the market to see what is being successful. Consumed themselves, gave it to a lot of users, and collected a lot of feedback. So what do you think about this? What do you think about the taste of this? Do you think you would like to recommend it to your friends? Asked a lot and then found out that there's no point in launching a huge variety of food. There seems to be one thing which the customers are liking a lot, or Ekize, the entrepreneur, is able to do very well. So that was pre-cooked, packaged, ready to eat tomato stews. That is it. So Captain Food specialized in tomato stews, and it was made from locally grown produce and spices, which made it very, very tasty. There are a lot of other firms which I have put down over here. Zagreus is a firm which a lot of people from Kenya would have heard of. This is a firm which has been making a lot of noise. They build custom apps for small and medium-sized businesses called Zag Apps. They have a platform which is a full range of enterprise management products like accounting, inventories, sales, and all of this is launched at a price which is affordable to small businesses. Mubarak is the founder of this company, and he has spent a lot of time with small businesses. Many of his family members were from small businesses, so he spent a lot of time talking to them. And now this platform has been operating for almost 2 years, and it has drawn a customer base from across several sectors, and is also in the process of expanding to various other markets. Again, design thinking principles were very much used in coming up with the products which we are talking about over here. Nadeem Zuma is another person that I would like to talk about. He's the co-founder of the AIM group in Tanzania. Again, somebody who started off a business very early on at the age of 19, in fact. Started a software company which develops custom software. Very soon they found out that there is an enormous market around finance apps and the aggregation of it. And the company launched, FLOC, is credited for developing and deploying Tanzania's first mobile banking platform. The resultant AIM group has become one of the leading digital agencies in East Africa now. Still a very small company, has about 25 employees, but these are employees which are very directly connected with people on the ground, and again a company which has followed design thinking principles in finding out what the customers want and developing products matching the needs of the customer. Two other companies I would like to talk about is Campus Buzz. It's a very, very strange kind of social media network. It came up in Pakistan and is now expanding into markets in the Middle East. So the societies in the Middle East are very, very conservative and put a lot of restrictions on what can be openly discussed. Issues like politics, religion, sex are not things which can be very openly discussed in these societies. So campus buzz is a place where you can anonymously discuss issues. You don't need to have a handle. You just can just go and express your opinion, and more importantly, engage with others who are willing to express similar or opposing thoughts. So you can have a debate without letting others know who you are. Also, the very important thing about it is they have used AI to figure out how to have small groups which are centered around colleges. So they use GPS related data to make sure that people are spending time in the geographical zone of the college often enough at during college times, so that it is restricted only to a college community. So they build up these college communities. There is a lot of talk in between the college communities also, but here you do not have any identifiers in terms of handles. You can just go and start posting. And very soon they have hit about 15,000 users. And this is only in Pakistan. They have just recently launched in Dubai. Circo Solar Lights sells lights, solar lights. There are a lot of companies who are doing this, and we're failing miserably at it. So the Sirish Hande, the owner of Selco, the entrepreneur who started it, went and lived in a village for a long time, found out that the problem was not that people didn't want to buy the lights, but the fact that there was no way of repairing it. There was no way of carrying out regular maintenance around it. So he build a system where there is an entrepreneur village who sells the light and also later repairs it. That was a huge insight. He got this insight about 20 years back, and that revolutionized the market for solar products in rural India. So these are some of the examples I'm using. I think as faculty members and as entrepreneurship educators, you should look at various ways of finding out examples which are relevant to your community and integrating them in your classroom. That is certainly a way forward that you should be looking for over here. Finally, what I would like to show is there are some links that I'm giving to 5 sites, again, not too many. Of course, you have 1,001 sites on the net now which are devoted to design thinking. But these are my favorite sites. For example, you have IDEO, which is probably the company which has done more to popularize the concept of design thinking than anybody else. Design Thinking blog is again a blog which is dedicated to everything about design thinking, including new methods, new examples, all of these come up. Proximity Designs is actually a company which is based in Southeast Asia, but I found that they're doing extremely interesting and groundbreaking work when it comes to designs, using design for business solution. Design thinking for educators, of course, we are all educators here, and that is one which is going to be useful for all of us. How to use it in class, what are the kind of examples that you're going to get. SSIR, of course, is the Stanford Social Innovation Review, and they often come up with articles of where design thinking is useful in social innovation and in business and related things. And many of us have a very social bent of doing what we are doing, and I think that would be another one which is useful for all of us. So just gave you an overview of what design thinking is and how it can be useful in class and how it can be used in class. Um, there were a few of your doubts which were raised earlier. I think I have managed to address many of the doubts through what I have been doing over here, but I'm sure there are some more doubts which are left. Um, if you can now, let us know what the doubts are. We'll take it forward and try to answer your doubts and queries. Yes, Chandan. Chandan, are you there? Hello. I think we have lost Chandan.
Technically glitched, so we could
Sorry.
not hear the last bit of yours.
Oh, okay. You've heard the links? Okay. Which bit have you
Yes,
not heard?
yes, Rajiv.
Yeah, which bit have you not heard?
The last bit, once you finish this uh,
The links?
explaining about these links, yes.
Okay. Okay, so we got a lot of queries from all of you, and I have tried to answer those queries through this short lecture on design thinking. But I'm sure there are some more queries that you have, some which have not yet been answered. And if you could just let Chandan know the questions, he'll be able to relate those to me, and I'll try my best to answer to whatever extent possible. The queries can be about the theory, or it can be about its application in class.
Okay, we have a question. It's asked, at what point does environmental scanning takes place?
Environmental scanning is something that you obviously do all the time because the process is a very open process, but obviously it starts when you are looking at empathy itself. So when you're doing empathy, you are looking at your users. So that is when you are looking at uh, getting into the environment. Now, when you by environmental scanning, you're talking about a standardized way like a pestle or a pest analysis, which you're doing to look at your competitors and everything else. Obviously, it starts when you are talking to your customers. The customers will tell you about why they're using competitors, why, or what are the other social issues that they're talking about. But when you are going in the last phases, that of testing it out, that is when the environmental analysis becomes extremely important. If something is failing in the market, you need to have a 360 view of why exactly it failed. If there is something which is succeeding in the market, you do not need to get carried away, but again have a 360 degree look as to why exactly it succeeded. So environmental scanning gets more importance as we go down the scale, but obviously it is something that starts from the very first step itself.
Our next question is from Professor Charles. His question is, how do we integrate these concepts in traditional teaching methods?
Thank you, Professor Charles. I think this is certainly a different way of doing things, and its integration need not necessarily only be when we are talking about innovation or when we are talking about entrepreneurship. I think it is important to inculcate a design thinking approach to how our students are going about their daily lives itself. So we have to find ways in which we are encouraging the students to think from other people's point of view. And when I say encourage them to think from others' point of view, is not just ask them, so how do you think that person is feeling? That is a start. Okay, so you think that is what that person is feeling? Why don't you go and observe that person? See what exactly the person is feeling. The next step would be, okay, you saw what they're feeling. Now you have a certain idea of what you think they're feeling. Now go and ask them, what do they feel? And ultimately do what that person is doing and then see how you're feeling. So the entire process of starting with observation, then engaging, and then immersing yourself is something that we have to teach our students to do. The first step of design thinking is extremely important. I'm not saying that the other stages are not. Going back to many thinkers, I would say that just thinking through is not enough. You have to come up with a prototype and test it in the market. So I think the entire process, not just in innovation and entrepreneurship, but also in our other courses, we need to integrate it, and it is very easily integratable. It need not be a standalone exercise, but it can be a approach you follow in the entire curriculum.
Thank you, Rajiv. The next question is from Professor Pascal. Uh, Question is, how is design thinking different from creativity?
Uh, Good to hear from you, Professor Pascal. Creativity is a part of it. I think when we're talking about creativity, there are a lot of tools that go into being creative, and the design thinking approach is part of the design thinking approach is also something that leads towards the creativity. But creativity is when you come up with a solution. From going from creativity to what is innovation means that you are actually implementing the result of the creativity in a concrete product. That is innovation. And innovation aspect two is part of design thinking. That is when you make the prototype and actually go ahead and test it. So there is a lot of linkages between these two terms, but design thinking is certainly a far broader in terms of what you do, and creativity is a specific part of the entire process. But creativity also encompasses a lot of other methodologies which need not necessarily be design thinking.
The next question is from Professor Jogbeth. This question is, how do you discover emotions that guides people behavior?
Uh, Thank you, Professor Jovet. I think emotions. I mean, we have a lot of problem in finding out about the emotions of people we are very, very connected to on a daily basis also. And obviously, it is difficult if you're looking at trying to discover the emotions of people that you are only interacting with for the purposes of a study, and you don't have too much of context on them. And yes, you're going to go wrong if you're probably going to concentrate on one or two people. And the idea over here is that our EQ and various levels of it allows us to draw certain inferences about the emotional states of various people by observing them. If we are observing people, we are likely to get an inference about their emotional state. And of course, when we go and engage with them, we talk to them, we can directly or indirectly ask them about their emotions also, and that gives us yet one more indication. I'm not saying that we can probably do a very accurate job of it, but in most cases we should be able to do a pretty good job of it if we try. I think as educators also, there's one warning I have to give you is that our students have a lot of very important things to do. They have to use their phones, they have to play video games, and occasionally they time find for work which is assigned to them in classroom. So one of the things that we have to be very careful about is to make sure that they have actually done what we want them to do. So I think it is our responsibility, as I said when I was talking about the user camera study and the fact that they can submit videos and they can submit stills of the user camera study. So we need to find some way of tracking what they have done. If our students have gone and observed people, if the students have gone and engaged with them, if they're gone and tried to immerse themselves, then our work is done. They'll figure out the rest of the things. They'll figure out how exactly they have to sit down, brainstorm, come up with a product. As long as they give adequate time to these activities, I think we should have a good answer.
Next question is from Professor Vedasto. He's asking, how can a group of 2+ individuals aggregate their empathetic encounters in the design thinking perspective?
Aggregation is not going to be that much of an issue. I think we have to also teach this. In fact, in practical experience, we have seen that when it comes to aggregation of experiences, it's usually a group of more than two. In many of the classes, I've seen groups of 4 or 5 trying to aggregate their experiences and come up with a composite. Uh, Again, it needs a certain level of respect for each other's findings, and the unpacking and packing, the definition part of it, that's the mode in which you define what the problem statement is. That is where it becomes extremely important. And team dynamics are extremely important over here. You have to make sure that as a faculty, as a facilitator in the classroom, each member in the class, in the student group, is getting adequate say and is able to express what they have gone and learnt about the user. That is very, very important.
Next question is from Professor Ilyab. Question is, students are taking long time to grasp the concept of design thinking. How do we handle it?
Yes, I agree with you, Professor Lia, but many of the students can get very confused. I would say let's stick to the basics. I would say that ask them to go and develop the empathy. The empathy stage is the important one again. Go, ask them to observe, ask them to engage, ask them to immerse. Just ask them to do these things. Let's not have very fancy ways of doing it. Let them do it to the best of their abilities. It need not even be very directed. Let them do it in a manner in which they can. And the next stage is when they come and they try to figure out what the problem statements are. That the definition phase is where they'll need a lot of your support and handholding in class. Let them come out with the problem statements, but you can sit down with them and refine it. That is where they'll need your support. Ideation stage, where they come up with solutions to the problem, again, that is a stage where they are likely to be self-sufficient in figuring out what exactly are going to be the solutions. They can do a very good job of it. And prototyping and testing, these are stages which need a little more than just the facilitator's intervention, and you should make sure that the students are motivated enough to do the prototyping and coming up with the testing of the prototype also. So as I just to reiterate, very important to make sure that you at least get them to do the first two stages, your intervention being necessary in the second stage.
There is another question, whether the classes can be collaborated with skilled people at workshop as a practical course.
Very much. I mean, design thinking is all about practical, and I can't think of a better idea than actually having co-classes with other skilled people who are in workshops and who are trying to create something. So students can very well get into these classes and work jointly with them. I think it's a great idea.
This last question will take, this from Professor. Are there any difference in applying design thinking approach in the development of tangible products or intangible services?
Tangible products gives you a better feel because you have something which you can hold and you can show others. Something intangible is a little difficult to display, and so that intrinsic pleasure of having built something is not there. But then again, it is easier to come up with the intangibles. It doesn't need too much of money, effort, and time to rework your intangibles. And the process itself lends itself to both. But it's easier to come up with intangibles. It is more satisfying when the solutions are the tangible ones. So I think it applies to both products and services is what I would like to say. I have never seen any major challenges in either.
There are two questions, Rajiv. Actually, this is for me to answer. Question one, can we share the recording of this webinar? Because few of the professors, they have faced the internet issue. Yes, answer is yes. We will be sharing the webinar recording versions by early next week. So that you can use it and refer to it whenever you want to refer. The next question is, how often are we going to be doing this kind of webinars? We will be doing these kind of webinars based on the requirement from the faculties and the challenges they are facing in different topics when they're delivering a course in the classroom. So we have got few information from different markets, from East Africa market, and we will be doing different webinars. And the topics and the webinar dates will be notified much in advance, so that you will be prepared henceforth for the next webinar. Rajiv, can we take one last question?
Sure, let's take a last question.
Okay. This is from Professor Elisha. The question is, the design thinking approach, how applicable is it with large classes? Could it be effective?
Large classes, I would say, unless you're looking at an extremely disciplined bunch, and I have never seen a very extremely disciplined bunch anywhere on the planet, I think large classes are a challenge. I would like to put a limit at if you have a classroom which is more than 60 people, please don't try too much when we are talking about design thinking. A good size for a class is 25 to, let's say 20 to 30 is a good size for a class. And I don't think you should have significant problems till the size of about 45. But anything more than 60 is a huge challenge. So one way of handling it is if you have some very effective prizes or something like that, which you can use. Okay, Chandan, thank you very much. It was nice being able to address people on this very important topic. Should you announce the small little competition that we have?
Yes, Rajiv, I'll announce that. As a next step, you are expected to complete one task out of the two tasks that will be given to you now by using the concept of design thinking. These two tasks are: one, you will be given two problems and you are expected to come up with the solutions of these two problems. Task number two, we will share two market segments and you are expected to design a product or service for those two market segments. The details of those problems and market segments will be emailed to you by tomorrow morning. We will mail you all the problems, and the last date of submitting your task is on 2nd November 2017. Again, I'm repeating, the last date of submitting the task is 2nd November 2017. All the details will be emailed to you, and this is part of our Vadhwani Foundation Faculty Recognition Program. So we will be announcing the best. There will be a panel of experts along with Rajiv, who will be assessing and announcing the best results that has been received. And there is an award and recognition that will be from Vadhwani Foundation. So please, I appreciate all of you if you could be part of it. And then there are multiple given in each refresher to your recognition points. At last, I would like to thank you very much, Rajiv, for this interesting session. Thank you, all of you, for participating in this refresher webinar. We are glad that the questions kept coming, but due to lack of time, we are unable to answer all. But in the meantime, I would request, if you have any specific challenges, please do write back to us, or either you can reach out to any of our program managers from your country, or you can reach out to me at chandan@wfglobal.org directly as well. And we will be sending you the possible solutions through mail. And the recorded version, as I mentioned, it will be shared with you by next week. Thank you once again, and have a nice evening.
Thank you, Chandan. Thank you for everything. Thank you, everyone.